Our topic is change orders, but it should really be called contract changes. There are three types of changes in work that are discussed in most construction contracts, and change orders are only one. The three types are change orders, construction change directive, and order for minor changes in work. Each of these is going to be discussed in detail later. First, we need to discuss why changes are necessary and why they're important. First, changes can add significantly to the cost of a project. Broadly speaking, they can run from 5 to 50% of the project costs. Changes may be relatively small on projects that are very predictable. A one-story grade school would be a good example. There is a simple design with well-known products and methods. The probability of having significant changes due to unknown circumstances or misunderstanding of means and methods would be rare. On the other hand, the renovation of an old building for a new use would be likely to have significant unknown conditions that would need to be addressed during the construction process. This could also happen with new buildings where there are innovative designs and materials. The Milwaukee Art Museum was designed by Santiago Calatrava. Second, many changes are necessary. In a minute, we will discuss the sources of change, illustrating some changes that are necessary. Finally, changes in the contract are important because they are a source of disagreement between the contractual parties. On the owner's side, they see costs escalating and the end product not changed. The contractor sees additional work outside the scope that they are not getting paid for. First, when we're looking at sources of change, first one we look at is the owner's directed change in scope. This would usually come in the form of changes in the amount or quality of work in the original contract. A few years ago, I had a friend who had just started a 5-story building in Chicago. This was a steel frame structure. The foundations were in, and the owner discovered that they were having problems leasing the space. They informed the contractor that they wanted to reduce the size of the 3-story building. Reduce the size to a 3-story building. The changes that were required included changing the steel frame, the amount of curtain wall needed, and redesign of all the mechanical systems. In another case, a new church was almost complete, and the owner decided to increase the size of the parking lot. There was enough land, but the drainage system needed to be modified, and all the subs required needed to remobilize to complete their work. Next are constructive changes. This is where the architect or owner causes work outside the contract, often due to defective plans or specifications. Where we often see these are in MEP conflicts with the structure or other MEP components. One of the buildings on the Auburn campus had a problem when it was discovered that the above ceiling coordination drawings did not take into account structural beams. The result is that there was a substantial reduction in the above ceiling space. Next are consequential changes. These are the changes that are a result from other changes. For instance, in an office building, it's decided to make a conference room bigger by eliminating an adjacent storage area. Seemingly, the elimination of one wall would not make a big difference other than the framing and drywall. But the additional area in the room required changes in the HVAC system. The wall that was eliminated had electrical receptacles and fire alarm devices, both of which needed to be changed. The lighting in the room need to be modified as well as the audio-visual equipment. The ceiling contract needed to be changed because the storage room did not have a ceiling, and the floor covering contract needed to change. All of these changes were required before any work was in place. Had some of the work been finished, additional adjustments would have been required, including demolition and additional time. Differing site conditions. This would be where conditions are substantially different from that which would have been anticipated. Encountering soil that cannot be compacted in a swampy area would not be unusual. On a project in Michigan, the contractor ran into a large concrete foundation unknown to the owner and that soil borings did not detect. It turned out that there was a World War II era barracks on the site, which had been demolished shortly after the war. The contractor rightfully claimed that this was an unforeseen condition. The discovery of hazardous materials. Not too many years ago, this was a significant problem when contractors encountered buried fuel tanks left over when a gas station or other business closed down. Such tanks are carefully monitored now, but there are still many out there that have not been found. Unexploded ordnances on a military base is another example. England and Germany have a significant number of bombs discovered each year. In Laos, hundreds of people are killed every year from the millions of unexploded bombs left over from the bombing between 1964 and 1972. Code revisions are another source of change. Each governmental body has building codes, and these codes change over time. Between the time a building is designed and the beginning of construction, new codes could be adopted. Once the codes are adopted, they will be enforced. Contractors will be required to meet the new codes, and most construction contracts address this topic by allowing contractors to submit change orders for the cost of meeting new codes. Product substitution is when a subcontractor or supplier will request to provide a product different than the one specified. The reason could be that the specified item is no longer manufactured, the new product is superior in some ways, or some other reasons. This is a case where the change could be approved, will be approved with not a change in the contract cost. The exception on the contract cost would be if a product were not available, in which extra costs could be approved. Next, we're going to look at the actual contract language that applies to changes. We're going to look at the general conditions set out in AIA 201, 1997. There are other organizations that provide contracts, such as the Engineers Joint Contract Document Committee, Design Build Institute of America, Associated General Contractors, and governmental contracts. The contract language varies, but the general provisions are similar. You'll need to go through your specific contract to find out the rules and processes that apply to your project.